passes inside the 20 and a touchdown for Terry McLaurin.
Okay, here is RG3. He's going to run for the first down. And still on his feet. RG3 is going to outrace everybody.
Welcome back to the Burgundy and Gold Review podcast. My name is Jess, formerly for the first time of HTTR.nation on Instagram. It's finally that time. The official rebrand name change process for the Washington football team is completed, now known as the Washington Commanders. No longer have my handle, HTTR Nation. Of course, you can now find me on Instagram at the WSH Commanders. That's at the WSH Commanders. And it's a new time period for a lot of us Washington fans. We got new uniforms, new logo, no more controversy or headlines really surrounding our name for the first time, and as long as I can remember, at least. And for this podcast, I'm joined by a several amount of my good friends in the Washington community, a lot of people I've known for at least several years at the earliest, all people who want to give some their immediate one day after insight to how the rebrand process has gone. I'll start us off with Justin, my co-owner on HTTR Nation. Formerly of Skin Scouts on Instagram, an iconic fan page, iconic name in the Washington community. Justin, how you doing? Thanks for joining.
What's up, Jesse? Appreciate you having me on. First time on the podcast. Appreciate the kind words about Skin Scout. I'm excited.
Next up, we got Ray, formerly of Redskins Analysis on Instagram. Big fan page. Always got a lot of engagements with some controversial posts. Ray, it's been a little bit. How you doing?
What's up, Jesse? I'm excited to be here. I mean, this should be fun. It's definitely weird not running Redskins Analysis anymore, but I mean, it's nice to have the time off too. So
there we go. I mean, gotta take a break every now and then. We'll see if a return's on the horizon. If you ever want to take command one of these days. But next up, we got Tim. Tim does not have an actual account, has not really been a fan page member in the community, but good friend of mine in my personal life, someone I've known for a long time, hardcore Washington fan, knows a lot of stuff. Tim, big time period in Washington. How you doing today?
I'm good, Jess. Thanks for having me on. It's time to command the day.
And last, but certainly not least, another friend of mine, someone who also does not have a fan page, but has some great insight, great personality in the Washington fan community on Instagram. And that is Colin. Colin, how you doing?
Doing great. Happy to be on the podcast. I'm looking forward to talking with these guys and taking command for moving forward. So, yeah.
So I want to thank all you again for taking your time to hop on. Obviously, it took a little bit to get around 5 busy schedules here. But Washington Commanders, I mean, we kind of saw that coming for a little bit. There were some leaks leading up to it. We had merchandise leaks. We had copyright leaks. We had just a lot of the tea leaves pointing that way, a lot of kind of sense that that's what it was going to be. Maybe the team was leaking it that way so they could have a bit of a softer landing come February 2nd. But the names here, obviously, not a lot of people were too happy when it first came. I, for one, am pretty solid with the name. But what are all of your guys' I guess, initial reactions to it? Was it your first? Was it what the first name you wanted? Was it one that, is going to grow in time? Like, what are the thoughts?
I think it's just a very average name. It's like nothing I'm like too overly excited about, but at the same time, I don't absolutely hate it. It's kind of just like, honestly, it kind of fits with the franchise, what we've been for like the past 10 years. It's just kind of like, all right, not awful, not great. So, I mean, I'm not mad, but I certainly thought there were better options out there.
I'd say it's like a safe name. Like it wasn't like anything out of the ordinary. We kind of expected it with all the leaks, especially, so it wasn't like surprising. Definitely wasn't my first choice. I would like something more along with like the history, like maybe the Hogs, Red Hogs, just because goes back. But I mean, it's a safe name. Could have definitely been worse.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. It's definitely a safe name. Commanders, it's general. It's military themed, which we all kind of expected. We've heard, they initially thought potentially Warriors, which they ruled out because it still had that tie-in to Native American imagery, which they wanted to get away from. We've heard Red Wolves by a ton of fans, which I was not a fan of, but they ruled that out. because of trademark issues. The other thing was potentially DCFC, which I feel like a lot of fans would be upset with as well, since it would just be continuing the football team but changing team to club. Commanders, it's general. We kind of all expected them to go a safe route. The only thing with that is, in my opinion, is it might not be as safe as they probably thought. The only reason I think that is, I have no issue with the name. It's whatever. But to others, there are a lot of people who are against war, against military. You might hear some rumblings down the line about how somehow Commanders is offensive as well, or maybe not align with certain people's viewpoints. And I think that also goes into, you're probably going to lose a lot of fans who are from other countries. They might not necessarily be ecstatic that their favorite team has now changed to the name Commanders, which is kind of naming after the U.S. military and other branches of that as well. So I think that might become an issue down the line. We'll see. But personally, right now, it's okay. It's nothing that sticks out of the ordinary. The two favorites that I had going into it were Hogs or Red Tails. I think that would have been cool and unique, but no issue with the name from my side, I guess, right now.
Well, I really like the name Commanders. It's nothing flashy, but like Justin and Tim said, like, it's a safe name. I personally, the other two choices I liked were Red Tails, and then before I really liked Red Tails, I also thought it would be cool if we went back to the Braves. But I think Red Tails would have brought like more of a sense of tradition than Commanders. Although Commanders does make a lot of sense since we're in DC and it has to do with the military. Also, the thing with Red Tails, you could have kept HTTR, and the fight song wouldn't really have to change much.
And now we're keeping HTTC, so Hail to the Commanders. What do we think about that?
I think it's like weird. I think it would be a lot more sense if we kept HTTR, but just replace Redskins with Red Tails. But changing it to HTC is like kind of too weird. I think you would need like something different, and I just think you need something different. I just don't think you really can replace HTTR to HTC like that. It's just too much of a change for me.
I agree. I think
I'm not.
The problem with HTTC is it's kind of forced, it feels like. And if you're trying to, that kind of came from the fight song, the old fight song. So maybe they're going to try to keep some version of the fight song, which I just feel like is, again, a little forced, especially with Commanders, which is a lot longer of a name. It doesn't really fit in how the fight song was, but it'll be interesting. I also personally, I think the team's hashtag Take Command. It's not bad, but I prefer our hashtag in the group chat, Command the Day. I think it's a little bit more original, a little bit more fun. So
yeah, I was gonna say with the hashtag thing, Take Command is not bad, but I really like Command the Day. It's just a little more fun to say, I feel like.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, with the hashtag Take Command, like, people are mad because that's just taken like straight off of the San Antonio Commanders from the AAF a couple years ago. Like, I don't know, I feel like it was just almost lazy to like announce we're creating a new brand and then kind of just take the name and like the main hashtag from a team that existed in professional football not very long ago. But to me, that was a little lazy and kind of just a little tone deaf into this whole, new brand process. So I don't know, that's something that I think kind of annoyed me as a fan.
Justin, I think you made some good points earlier, definitely about the safe route taken with the name. You try and steer away from controversy, and even now it seems like people are still reaching for some form of emphasis in the word reaching, I guess, in a way, but looking for some form of controversy even with the name. But I feel like, a little bit of a counter to that, I feel like if you were to then come from the name Commanders, let's say in 15, 20 years, down the line, it becomes an issue again. I think that kind of then just opens a Pandora's box for a lot of NFL names in the league, though. I mean, you look at some of the other teams, Minnesota Vikings, historically, like, I don't want to misspeak anything here, but like a group here that you associate with raiding and pillaging in terms of what classifies as a Viking. The Dallas Cowboys, Cowboys in history doesn't have the biggest or brightest hit, or most clean slate of history going back to that. Even the Kansas City Chiefs, they're probably the next team going to be on the chopping block. So that is an interesting point you bring, how there is still somewhat of a possibility of controversy down the line. But I do think there are probably going to be some other, if that were to become the case in a doomsday scenario where every professional sports team name becomes controversial, then I think there are a couple other names we'd see in the chopping block before then. But I guess just tossing on to my thoughts with the name Commanders. A lot of guys mentioned, a lot of you mentioned the other picks you had. We heard Red Tails, heard Red Hogs. Red Tails for the conveniency of switching over or keeping the HTTR. Red Hogs, keep the HTTR, and it ties into team history. Warriors was another really good one. That was personally my favorite, but I understand why the issues with the following through on or trying to stray away from any controversy with Native Americans. I don't think any of us here were diehard Red Wolves fans. That was definitely the biggest one that a lot of people took issue with, getting eliminated from the rebrand process. I think that's a good transition to my next point, is that the rebrand process was a bit of a mixed bag for some people. There were some creative things, like the team doing a mini series throughout the entirety of it, the team having fan polls, there being a lot of options and alternatives and different ideas tossed out there. But there are a lot of people not happy with how the rebrand process went, whether it's leaks or what the final result was. Can I get any of your guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, I think that's kind of expected to have leaks. I mean, we've seen it with the Cincinnati Bengals, the Los Angeles Rams, and some of the other teams that have had either new logos or completely new uniforms. I think the leaks were expected. I think the only disappointing thing was, I believe the first leak of the name came from the team itself when they forgot to blur the images out on the TV show. That was the biggest disappointment, was that it came from the team itself. But other than that, like, I think it's expected. It's going to happen in today's world with Twitter and Instagram and all these social media platforms. It's just an inevitable thing that's going to happen. But it's, if you want to have a surprise, then I guess you have to stay off of the social media.
I'd agree with Justin, because it's like, I mean, this day and age, it's pretty much everything's going to get leaked. I'd say it's definitely worse when like the team itself leaks it accidentally, rather than just some guy on Twitter or something. But I mean, overall, it could have definitely been worse. But I mean, it is what it is, and can't complain too much about it.
Yeah, I think with the leaks, you really just can't help if somebody working at like a Nike factory just takes a picture and uploads it to Twitter. But obviously, like, the team leaking it itself on accident is like something totally different.
Yeah, I think if I was gonna add to that, like, I'll be pretty honest. Like, I thought the rebrand process was like really just like disappointing from start to finish. Almost just because I felt like they tried so hard to make it seem like it was such a big deal, when in reality, like, I don't think it really needed to take 2 years to get the product we got. That's the first thing. And then the second thing too is just like the whole, we're gonna throw misdirection at you, and there really wasn't any misdirection at all, in my opinion. Like, at any point, I never thought it was going to be anything other than Commanders, based on what we heard and like saw. And like you guys were saying about the leaks, like, you can't really be mad at that. But I mean, I feel like they could have done definitely a better job at like hiding it up a little bit. I mean, the helicopter footage, that was just kind of lazy. Like, they could have easily hidden that from the public, or just, I don't know. I thought they kind of overhyped it a little bit. And then the other thing about the rebrand process is when they like stressed how much they were going to use fan input. Like, it was like every one of those episodes, or like every time they talked about it, they always mentioned like how many submissions they got and how many like tireless hours they worked to make sure they listened to the fans and got everyone happy. But it's like I don't think I ever saw someone like really pushing for Commanders that wasn't either associated with the team or the front office. Like I never saw like fan movements being like, oh, Commanders is like easily the best choice. Like you definitely saw that with Red Tails, you saw that with Red Hogs, you saw it certainly with Red Wolves. Like Ray even said, the Braves. Like you pretty much saw it with every other main candidate except for Commanders, in my opinion. So the whole like this is a fan thing, I think was just kind of a lie, and it just I don't know. It annoys me when they kind of like they make you seem like you're a part of the process, but I really don't think they cared about what we wanted. I mean, I don't know. I just feel like they had such a good opportunity to like make sure most people liked it at least, or even if you're going to bring fans in to like look at jersey designs or look at logos and kind of like give their input. Like I just don't really feel like they did that at all. So that really disappointed me. I would give the whole brand like rebrand process like a pretty low grade if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you that it was definitely disappointing in some ways, especially for a 2-year rebrand, which I've been saying all along. Like that's how long a rebrand usually takes. Like come up with a whole new logo, whole new uniform set, and then change every single thing that has the old logo on it. It's a long process, but I think the disappointing thing was it's not really. I mean, we'll get to the logos here in a minute, but it's not really a new logo. It's the same exact W logo that they've been using, except for they put some lines in it, and they didn't really explain a lot of their decisions. There wasn't a video or images from the team account that explained why they designed the uniforms this way, or why they put lines in the logo, or why they have a circle crest as the secondary logo. There wasn't really anything explaining further of why they did things. So it just kind of makes it seem like they just did things. They did eventually have a explanation for each of the 3 uniforms, but there wasn't really anything that I guess describing in detail of why they did certain things, still, in my opinion. And then the other thing is the fact that, they kind of did the minimum of rebrand and like telling the story of it. They didn't come out with anything that was like, hey, this is why you should get behind this name. This is why you should like it. It was just, here's the name. That's it. Here's the photos of the jerseys, but most of the photos were waist and above, so you didn't really get to see the full uniform set. You didn't get to see the different combinations of black, white, black, or burgundy, black, black, and different things like that. I think that was a little bit of a disappointment as well. They came out with one video about the new name and uniform. I feel like they kind of did the minimum that was required, but didn't go above and beyond that you would have expected from a two-year build up to this, and as much as they hyped it up.
Yeah, I'd hop in with that, saying like the way how it took 2 years and everything. Because you look at a team like the Cleveland Indians, like they had a new name the next day. They had a whole new plan. It was like, and I guess people like that one because like it relates to Cleveland because they got like the statues and stuff. This one just kind of felt like a hot mess. Like overall, like they were trying to do too much. Really, like it wasn't. They kind of like they overhyped it, made it a bigger deal than it was supposed to.
Yeah, I think on top of that, you would expect with all this time, they've at least known the name since the summer, from this past summer. So it's been at least 6 months since they've known that it was going to be Commanders. And I think the disappointing thing on top of that is if you go on NFLshop.com or, some of the people who were at the unveiling yesterday and got to go in the team store, there weren't really that many like pieces of gear that you could buy. And the ones that they did show were very, very underwhelming. You can only buy the burgundy jersey online right now. There's not the option to buy the away uniform or the black uniform. That's the alternate uniform. So I think that's the other disappointing thing was, you roll out the name and uniform, but you can't really get behind it and build up the hype if you can't, start getting the gear. I think that would have been one of the biggest things, which, Fanatics right now, Washington Commanders uniforms are like in the top 5, Chase Young and Terry McLaurin, but I still think it's a little underwhelming that you don't have at least the away uniform available to buy after a two-year rebrand, which I also understand. For like the last thing I want to say about it is, they don't have a fight song yet. They don't necessarily have a chant, which I'm glad they're kind of like leaving that up to be developed over time and through the fans, instead of, hey, this is our fight song, this is our chant. Like, they're going to leave a little bit of that up to the fans, which I think is a good thing, and have that come organically.
Yeah, I think with the fight song and a chant, it's definitely something that has to come more naturally. Like, over like the course of a couple games, you might hear fans just yell some stuff out loud at games that you might like, and then you'll start saying it, then other fans will pick up on it. I think it's just something has to happen, like a process like that, rather than the team coming out and saying, like, here's a few options you guys can pick from.
I did want to get a point in on here about, we mentioned about getting fan input on the rebrand process. What kind of actual impact did fan polls or listening to fan voices really have? And I will say, during, at least if what we've been told is accurate to the team, the name originally they wanted to go with was Warriors. Couldn't do that because of the controversy with it. And then they pivoted to really checking out the Red Wolves idea. And I mean, if it wasn't for the fan vote they allowed, Red Wolves isn't even in contention with anything. So I think, I do agree that it didn't feel like, it felt like their minds were somewhat made up. But I do believe that there was an impact made by the fans, an overwhelming one. And I know none of us are big Red Wolves guys, really wanting that to come to fruition. But you have to at least admit that there was a lot of movement there, so much so that it made the team investigate that idea until they've realized they couldn't follow through on it due to copyright issues or not liking it enough, whatever it may be. So I do think there was some impact that we could see made by the fan base, even if it wasn't the one that we wanted to be made by them.
Yeah, I think there was like a huge impact made by the fan base, but I also think like a line needs to be drawn. Like, honestly, I hate the Red Bulls name. Like, it has absolutely nothing to do with DC. The only thing it has in it is just the word red, and that's just not enough for me to be like a team name. To me, it just sounds like corny. It just doesn't make any sense, and I think a line had to be drawn.
Yeah, I'd definitely say like it was more like a publicity stunt more than anything, because I just wanted to get people excited, really. Like, I'm glad it wasn't Red Wolves, but even then, it's like, if you tell the fans, like, they get an input and then, just go in a completely different direction, it's kind of, I don't know, it just could have been handled better.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, too. You said, like, the copyright stuff, and I'm not going to lie, I just don't, like, 100% buy that, really, considering, like I said earlier, the Commanders is the name of an AAF team. And, like, I know the league's defunct, but, like, I don't know. There's so many teams in the NFL that have the same name as, like, college teams or other pro sports teams. I just don't completely buy the whole, we couldn't use this name. I don't know. It felt like a lazy response to the fans that really, like, put a lot of time and effort into that movement.
Well, I also feel like if they were able to weed out the name Red Wolves earlier, then it would have given fans more of a chance to get behind some like other names. Like, hey, like, I guess like we just can't do Red Wolves, so I'll find another name I like, and that would have given them fans like a better chance to pick another name.
I really like that point, Ray, where it's we didn't really get any new updates on. We always kind of heard it's coming in 2022 during the 2020. We first thought it was coming after the 2020 season. Then we were told midway through that offseason that the team wasn't going to have anything finalized until early 2022. And we didn't really hear anything about the rebrand until then. And then just on like a random morning in early January, they said, hey, this is happening then. By the way, the overwhelming favorite for the name that everybody wants isn't going to be happening. And so I think you make a fair point there in that they didn't really allow enough time for, I mean, maybe you can say they did, a month in advance, but I guess a lot of us saw how passionate some of those Red Wolves fans were about it. And so they at least didn't really, I forget who mentioned this earlier in the recording, but someone said like there wasn't really anything much done to kind of like get you behind the possibility of Commanders leading up to it. Like in the 2-3 weeks prior to the big announcement yesterday, we all kind of knew what the name was going to be, but there wasn't really any real big justification or any hinting as to why that was going to be a key name for us. So, I do think that could have been done a bit better, but I don't know. I mean, I'm not too frustrated with how the rebrand process went personally. I think I'm mostly satisfied with the end result. I mean, we can kind of get into that conversation now about what they actually gave us in terms of the logo and the uniforms and what we're going to be seeing and actually caring about from here on out. I mean, we already knew the name was going to be Commanders essentially. Yesterday was really just getting to finally be official and getting to see the new W, getting to see the new black uniforms, the new burgundy ones, the new white and black ones. So I guess that leads me into this next thing is that we got the uniforms finally. You can't really do anything. I liked them a lot, but you can't really do anything else except get used to them at this point. I know not everyone in here liked them. Let me hear about it.
For me personally, when I first saw the uniforms, they weren't terrible. I never thought they were definitely different. They were definitely different than other uniforms you see in the NFL. I wasn't disappointed, but I also didn't love them right away. But like they've definitely grown on me. And really the only two concerns I have with the jerseys or the uniforms was the W on the black helmet, which after seeing more photos has actually really grown on me, and I really like it. I also like how well, the other thing I was concerned with was the how the crest is above the nameplate on the back of the burgundy jersey. That I thought was really weird at first. It's grown on me a little bit more, but it hasn't grown on me as much as the W on the black helmet. I also like how the jerseys are inconsistent in their design, but at first I thought that was kind of weird. But after looking at them more, I kind of like how the jerseys are different. And I believe it's a white jersey that says Washington, which I don't like how it says Washington. I think it should say Commanders. Because when we were the Washington football team for 2 years, and it was just like such a plain name. I feel like Commanders obviously would have been better considering that's a new name. And like I said, the inconsistency to me is all right, but with the name being Washington on that one jersey and not on the other team, it's just kind of weird to me. I love the black jersey, the black and the gold. And with the numbers on the white jersey, how they're burgundy with a white fade in the middle, I thought that was really weird at first. But after looking at some more pictures, especially that picture of Chase Young with the white background with that jersey, I thought it looked really nice. So the jerseys to me, they're definitely different than what you see traditionally in NFL. But they've grown on me, and I actually really like them.
Yeah, I'd say I mean, I definitely like the red the most out of all of them. And they just look clean. They're almost like a color rush. It's just all one color with the gold popping. One thing I think is weird is like, I think every team, if not all, it's like their home uniform is the exact same as their away, but the colors are just flipped. And for us, it's just like all three are completely different, which I thought was odd, but it could work. I'd just like to see, maybe like a white with the same design as the red, or maybe I think the black's a good alternate. We'll see how it looks in game. I think it'll be better. But yeah, it's just interesting overall. And I'd also like to see like the different combos, because I know right now it's just like they show us red on red. I think it was like white. They had like white on black in the video, so that might look nice, and then black on black. I'd like to see. I doubt we'll get like gold pants or anything, but we got like red on yellow, like we used to back in the day. Maybe like white on red. But I mean, I guess we'll see how it turns out. But overall, so I'd give them like a 7 right now, 7 out of 10.
All right, so you guys already know how I feel about these. I'll say it a little bit more. But so as a designer myself, who has to create brands and think about these things on a daily basis, I am not a fan of these uniforms as a collection. I do really like the burgundy. The burgundy's all right. I love the helmets. I'll say that first. So I'll start with the best. So I love the helmets. That is my favorite part about this redesign. Is I really like the burgundy face mask. The W on the side of the helmet, sure, fine, that's okay. I'm cool with that. They got the single stripe down the helmet with the yellow, cool with that. The matte, it took me a little bit to get used to when they first showed it in the video, but I really do like the matte burgundy helmet. It is a lot like Minnesota, University of Minnesota's helmets, which is cool. I like it. The shine on the helmet really makes it go with the burgundy uniform as well. I'm kind of interested in the reason of why they went with the all burgundy look. I'm not sure how the white pants would match with it just because of the difference in designs, since it's completely different stripes on each uniform. So I'm interested to see if they will mix and match or if it'll mainly just be the uniforms combinations is mainly stays the same as with all burgundy and all white. I could see them mixing and matching the black and white uniforms a little bit, but no, the burgundy looks cool. I like the stripes. The commanders could be a bit smaller, and the crest on the back of the nameplate above it, I could go without that. I'm not a huge fan of that logo. The white uniforms, I feel like I don't really love them right now. I'm not a huge fan of them, but I think on the field they could look pretty cool potentially. It's very interesting to see why they went with the diamond patterns. I felt like that was kind of random, but it's not bad. On top of that, they added the black. There's not really any gold in the uniforms other than the Nike symbol. I think the worst thing about the white uniforms is the gradient numbers with the diamond pattern in it. I think that was a little bit forced. All the other jerseys that Nike has done with gradient patterns, no one has liked or they have not been well received, being the Falcons black and red gradient, and then the Jaguars matte to gold helmet a few years ago, and the Rams new gradient numbers as well. I think they should have learned to not do that this time, but they did. Hopefully it will look better on the field. I have hope that it will. My least favorite is the black uniforms. Just not a fan of those. I think things were just randomly placed. I'm fine with the commanders and the chest on the top left, but I thought the crest on the shoulder sleeve and then the DC logo on the other sleeve was kind of weird. Just kind of random in my opinion. And then you have the gold W logo smack dab in the middle of the helmet above the face mask. I thought was kind of weird. But on top of that, I felt like there should have been way more consistency with all these uniforms. As you said, it's almost like three different teams when you look at each one of these. The numbers are different from each uniform. There is no consistency with the stripes and different patterns that they put on each uniform. It just felt like we were unveiling three different new teams in a way, which I was not a fan of. I wish they would have just taken the burgundy jersey, flipped it, like as you said, inverted the colors for the away uniform, and then they could have done whatever they wanted with the black. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of a black alternate, but I know a lot of fan base is. So hey, good for you guys. I I hope they look a little bit better on the field. Right now, they kind of look like the Steelers. I think they should have went with a matte black helmet to go with consistency, but I think it would look a lot better, the black uniform with the burgundy helmet. I think that would be a little bit better and cooler look. We'll see if they do that or if they use the black uniforms, if they just go black out. But hopefully I'll warm up to the white and black uniforms a little bit more. But I definitely think the burgundy is the best and the most clean and the jersey with the most tradition and history kept in it a little bit.
I'll give my thoughts really quick since you guys pretty much covered every single point. Like with the logo, if I'm starting with the logo, I think that's probably the worst part of it, just because like the other guy said, it's basically the logo we had from the football team, which that brand was seemingly put together pretty quickly. And so it kind of feels like 2 years to add some lines is pretty bad. And I don't know, like the logo just kind of stinks for me. Like it's not a logo I'm like really proud about, I guess. And I think it's a franchise where they want you to be proud. And then with the jerseys, I guess I'll go through those pretty quick. I think it's compared to the other guys in this group, I think the black ones are my favorites just because they're so different. And I mean, I agree with what Justin said about how the burgundy helmets might look better with the black, but I also feel like with the NFL changing the rules and allowing alternate helmets, you kind of had to, if you're introducing a new brand, it's kind of like, I almost wonder if the NFL kind of pushed us to release an alternate helmet to kind of kick off that new, I don't know if you can classify that as a rule, but like the new, feature that they're bringing into allowing teams to do that again. But yeah, the black ones are probably my favorite just because they're so different and it really does feel like a new brand, like a new step in a different direction. Especially on the back, the nameplates. I really like how they had the two gold lines above and below the player's name. I thought that was a pretty unique thing I think it'll
See,
look
that was my least favorite part was the gold lines above and below the nameplate. Especially, I think it would look cool and okay with the longer names, but like with Allen and Young and some of the shorter names, it definitely it looks off.
Yeah, like I understand what you're saying there. Maybe if it was like if the line stopped or the name stopped, it would look better. But then again, that's not consistent with the whole uniform. So I definitely get what you're saying there. Yeah, I thought that was cool, and I like how they had the numbers on the helmets from the football team era. That 2-year era. And then the white jerseys, the white and the burgundy jerseys, both of them, I've just been like when they first got leaked/released. I thought they were really cool. I was like, okay, these actually aren't bad. And then I went to absolutely hating them for probably half a day yesterday. And then I went to really liking them last night. And I think today I'm back to absolutely hating them. I just think the consistency issue that Justin mentioned and Ray mentioned is it's so stupid. And I think it just doesn't fit with an NFL team almost. It just doesn't feel like the Washington Commanders. It feels like a college team or a youth team. It just doesn't feel like a brand that took 2 years to create. It almost feels like they had so many ideas and they just ran out of time and just decided to incorporate all the ideas they liked into 3 completely different jerseys. The diamond pattern, it just doesn't show up anywhere else besides the white jersey, and then the numbers on the logos doesn't show up anywhere else besides the black helmet. So it just, I don't know. To me, it just doesn't sit well, especially the burgundy jersey with the Commanders font being so large. That bothers me to no end. That it just looks so bad, and I just think that that's something that I could definitely see being changed within 5 years into this rebrand. It's just something that's going to look terrible on the field, in my opinion. And then I guess the last point I'd have to make is that one thing that's really annoying me with this whole process is honestly, the fans on Twitter and Instagram, all these people proposing, change this, it just at this stage, nothing's gonna get changed. I remember when the Rams released their new logo, and I think they had Eric Dickerson on board tweeting out, change the logo, tweak it to this one with the Rams head, combined with the LA. This looks so much better. I'm gonna talk to Stan Kroenke and all this stuff. It's just stupid and pointless. it's kind of just making it worse for me because it's like pointing out all these flaws that we know we can't change. So I think that aspect is just like getting on my nerves, but I feel like eventually I'll get used to it. But it kind of sucks that I have to sit here and be like, oh, it's something I'll just have to get used to. It can't be something I just like right off the bat. So I don't know. The uniforms and the logo, I think, could have been way better. And I mean, they definitely could have been worse, but they're still pretty bad in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with like of why we keep talking about consistency is the fact that this is a new team, like basically a new team in a way, where they have a new name, new uniforms. You want to be recognizable. And if all three of your jerseys are completely different and don't have a consistent look with them, then that becomes a problem when you're playing on prime time and other big games, whether it's a game of the week on Sunday night, the mid game, and other things like that. Is you want to have the jerseys look similar to where people see you playing and they're like, "Oh, that's the Washington Commanders." I think the white jerseys remind me a little bit too much of the Falcons and Cardinals. So I think that's the biggest reason of why we all say kind of consistency could have been better, because that is important. That's why when you see teams playing the national championship or other big games like that at the college level, for example, is they usually wear their home or away uniform, the consistent uniform that they usually wear, not an alternate, because they want to have their brand be immediately recognized. So I think that's the biggest thing with these uniforms. That's kind of a disappointment.
Yeah, one thing, going back to what Colin was saying about like you can like complain about like logos and stuff, can't critique it. One thing like that was just like really unsettling was like how like the crest logo had all the years, and it didn't just have Super Bowls, it had like NFL championships too, which is odd because you don't see teams usually combine those. And then the years that they did put, they had the year that they actually won it, and not like the year the team played. Because like if Bengals or Rams win this year, they'll be the 2021 champs. Not the 2022. We had like the 92 champs, the 88 champs. It's just, it's just like something simple that can easily be fixed, but it's just like, just slightly off. And it's just, it's just odd.
Yeah, I agree. That was definitely botched. That seems like more of a thing where whoever was creating the logo just looked up the years that Washington won it, and then they put those on there and no one really caught it. But I completely agree with that. That's kind of one of the things, the design of the crest logo itself, I'm not a huge fan of. I've started to warm up to it a little bit, but the one with the years of the championships won on it definitely bothers me, because you don't hear people saying the 86 Bears, they're the 85 Bears. So I think that's the biggest point on that logo as well, that's definitely bothering a lot of the fans. And if they're going to keep that logo, hopefully they make that change.
For me personally, something that, and as one of the people, I guess, in this call who's a bit, not that I'm like falling on my sword for the new logo or the new uniforms by any means, but don't really, I mean, you all made some fantastic points about the Justin, and Colin about the details, and Tim about like the consistency about how these line up, how you want to be one unified brand, one unified new team organization. But at least for me personally, something that did help with like liking the logos or not logos, but the uniforms a bit more was seeing some of the jersey swaps that came out today. I mean, we don't, as a podcast, I don't have any images I can show on here, but it's a different look looking at the jersey on its own, laid down on a table, or looking on a mannequin versus seeing it, onto a player and seeing what that kind of combination would look like. So I don't know if that worked for anybody else, but me, I've seen a couple things going around, some ones I definitely wanted to share in my story, but those have helped me at least warm up to
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's warmed me up to them a little bit. At first, when I first saw the black uniform, I was like, this is easily the worst uniform in the NFL. I still think it's a bottom uniform in the NFL, but seeing some of the jersey swaps of like Terry and Antonio Gibson in them, they look a little bit better. I still am not happy about the just random logo placements that they've put on there. But I completely agree with that. With just seeing them in different lights rather than a photo shoot setup, and other things like that, or like quick in a video. But I think the biggest thing that this all comes down to, and if people are gonna, like the uniforms or like the name, is the fact that can this team start winning? Who's going to be the quarterback next year? And I will say, I think the one quarterback who can pull off these uniforms, all three different versions, who I think would look pretty cool in them, Russell Wilson. I don't know. I think he could pull it off. So we'll see.
I quickly want to add something to what Justin was saying about the black uniforms. I don't think they could have picked a worse player to model those than Jonathan Allen, just because, first of all, his last name is short, like Justin said, so the yellow lines kind of look bad. And then second of all, his helmet is like massive for that W logo on the front. So I think that threw off so many people, especially me. Like just with his helmet, how different it is compared to like a Terry McLaurin or an Antonio Gibson. Like he just wasn't the guy to model that uniform. I think it looks so much better on, like the Photoshops we've seen. So I just wanted to point that out.
I think something that concerns me is not really more of the jersey design. It's just kind of the fact that they're not making like Sean Taylor and other former players like Redskins jerseys anymore. And I think that's kind of weird. Like you can go ahead and put Sean Taylor's name or like John Riggins' name on a Commanders jersey. It would be weird. I would never buy one. I'm sure other fans would buy them though, and would kind of like them. But for me, I just think it's weird just to totally not make Redskins jerseys at all for like Sean Taylor and John Riggins and Theismann and like other guys like that. Like obviously you don't need to make Redskins jerseys for every former player. So I think key former players definitely deserve to still have Redskins jerseys being made for them so fans can buy them.
I see why they wouldn't make Redskins jerseys for past players, but I think if anything, keep the Washington on there. Just replace Redskins with Washington and use the jerseys that they have been for the past 2 years for those. Because I do think it is a little bit weird to buy a jersey with John Riggins and the Commanders uniform. It just doesn't really make sense. So I do wish they would have at least kept the Washington jerseys for the throwback uniform in a way.
Yeah, that's a good point. Another thing I'd like is because even when we were the football team, we still had like the throwbacks of the gold numbers with the burgundy jerseys. I just think they could still bring that back. It's something we could still have, but it'll be interesting. I doubt we'll have it this year, but maybe in years to come.
I hope we do a throwback to the Washington football team uniforms. Just put some numbers on the side of the helmet, put Washington back on the jersey. Just a little one game alternate throwback to the 2 years we were the Washington football team, and maybe about 10 years. You don't have to do it immediately, but 10 years time, I think that would be kind of cool, a little funny.
I do think it is worth noting, obviously, we got the black alternates because 2022 is the first year that we can have that extra helmet that the team can use. But then I do know, I forget, I don't know if it was Michael Phillips on Twitter or who it was, but there is another uniform coming in 2024. So the team will have 4 uniforms by then to rotate through, since we're talking about possibilities of throwbacks or whatnot. What's going to happen with that, I honestly don't know, but we are running a bit later on time here, so I want to go around to each one of you one last time. And on a scale of 1 to 10, give your 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, give your best grade for what you would give this entire process by Washington, factoring in the rebrand, factoring in what the name ended up being, factoring in what the uniforms are. As a Washington fan, on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling today, this morning, the day after the rebrand process with the Washington Commanders franchise?
Taking like a 2-year process. I mean, it just could have been done well, but just better overall. So I'd give it like a 5.5. And that's being like more generous, but I mean, because it didn't end up terribly, but I don't know, just like we just waited way too long. There's just too much anticipation, and it just made it like a bigger deal than it should have been.
I would give it a 7 out of 10. I think they it did make it a bigger deal than it should have been. But overall, I like the final results, even though I'm still going to call them the Redskins. I think the final results look pretty good to me.
I'm gonna give it a grade. Like honestly, I think at this point, if they want to hear from the fans, I'll be like harsh on them. Like there's not a single thing about the whole process that I love. Like not a single thing I love, but there are many things that I hate. Like I don't love the logo. I don't love the jerseys. I don't love how long it took. I don't love what they said in the press. I don't love what they said to the media. You know, there's just like nothing about it that like gets me super excited. So like honestly, I'll give it a 2 out of 10. It just could have been so much better, and it just I don't know. It leaves like a disappointing feel, and just like as a fan, like it doesn't feel like we're moving forward. It just kind of feels like we did this because we had to, and just kind of like was done in a lazy way. So I'd probably give it a low 2, if anything, just because, like I said, it doesn't do it for me. So yeah, that's my grade.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on some of that stuff as well. There wasn't like anything that I necessarily loved, right when I saw it, which, love is a strong word, and it's definitely something that takes some time. So maybe over time we'll start to love it. But so I would say maybe there wasn't really anything sexy about it. The helmet was pretty close. The matte burgundy helmet, I think that was a little bit cool. But I didn't really nothing really stood out to me that was like, wow, this is awesome. Which the expectations weren't that high, just because of everything else surrounding the Washington franchise over the past 30 years. That I didn't really have high expectations, but I thought they did an okay job. So I think I'm at about like a 4.5 out of 10. So, but hopefully, as I said, we'll continue to root for the team, and in a year or two, it'll grow on us, as Washington football team did on me. I was a big fan of that. I just thought, it was kind of bland, a little boring, but I thought it was kind of funny at the same time. It was just kind of ironic. But I think, as I said, the biggest thing that will get people on board is, starting to win. And that starts with finding quarterback this offseason.
I just want to butt in really quick just before we end this. But one more last reason why my grade was so low, I think, too, is just like, not only do I not like what we have, but I think there's just so many missed opportunities too with it. Like the Hogs was right there for them to take, and really like, you could come up with, all those. You read what was in the swag boxes, like the cringe little like lines that they write for the people, like command, we command you to like, you know what I mean? Like they have all those stupid sayings. Like the Hogs had that opportunity to be like, take the glory from the past, what like the best days of this franchise, and take that name and move it forward into something new. Like it was so like we had it right in our hands and we botched it. That's what really gets me the most. Is just because that name was so perfect. You could have done so much with it. Like that's an easy mascot to make. There's just so much you could have done with that. So I think that also just factors into my grade being low, just because of almost like what could have been. So I had to add that.
Success is what matters at the end of the day. I mean, looking back to when the Redskins transitioned into the Washington football team, there were not a lot of fans that came. I did not really care for the name Washington football team when it was announced that day in January or July of 2020. And lo and behold, 2 years later, we have one backdoor 7-9 playoff season. I mean, well, you got to take what success you can with Washington. But you have a successful season with it. It grows on you. You get attached to it. It becomes ingrained in your memory. You get nostalgic with it. So hopefully in these upcoming seasons, starting with 2022, we can have those memories that can be attached and tied into Commanders, and actually allows it to grow on much more of the fan base, because as of right now, it seems fan base is a little divisive, a little split on it. But I mean, Justin, you said what matters at the end of the day. Do you win football games? Are you a relevant team year in and year out? Washington hasn't been. And so if they want the name to get more popular, you got to start doing the thing that makes that happen, and that's winning football games. So got a busy, very key, important 2022 offseason ahead, but I want to thank each one of these guys for hopping on the podcast, almost an hour now, talking about the name debate, the long lead up to it, how the process went, what results we got. Justin, Tim, Ray, Colin, thank you each individually for coming on here. If you want to find me and Justin on Instagram, we're at the WSH Commanders 365. Again, no longer HGTR Nation, unfortunately. But want to thank everybody for tuning in, giving this podcast a listen. You can find the Burgundy and Gold Review podcast and any and all major streaming platforms: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon, you name it, you can find us there. So thank you all for listening, and I will catch you all next time. Take command.